that on the okay, it's just told me recording in progress. I love technology, don't we? So Kate Muir, as anybody, if you don't know her, which I'm sure everybody does, is a menopause expert. She's a writer and producer of 3 groundbreaking Davina McCall health documentaries, including Sex, Myths and the Menopause, which have all been exclusively for Channel 4. She's an author, as I said, of everything you want to know about the menopause. I would say please go out and buy the book, but also listen to the audiobook because it's fantastic to hear it in Kate's own words. Thank you, Kate, for joining us today. Kate's going to be speaking for the next 20 minutes, half an hour. If you have any questions for her, please do post them to me, and I'll be facilitating the chat. So enough of me. You're probably sick of my voice already. Thank you, Kate, and I'll hand over to you.
Hello. Thank you all for taking time out to listen to this today. I bring you, always I say at the beginning of these talks, good news about the menopause, and it's only good news because the more knowledge you have, the more things you can do about it, the more conversations like this that we can have with it without being embarrassed whatsoever. It is just life-changing for so many women, and you were talking about your mother there, and you know, my mother, you know, never mentioned it at all. And you know, there's that whole silent generation, and if we can mention it and get through it and find ways through it, it just makes such a difference. And you know, with Steve is there too. You know, just men being our supporters and our allies and the people we're, you know, in love with, and the people who are our colleagues. It is really, really important to include them in the conversation. And men are incredibly receptive to this conversation. So I'm very pleased, and I'm very pleased we're talking to quite a male-dominated industry today. So it's very important to kind of, you know, give you all sort of support. So I'll tell you a little bit about my menopause, and then I'm going to share my screen and do a little PowerPoint of some of the stuff and some of the crazy science and some of the stuff about the campaigns we've done with Davina McCall and other people. But first, I mean, I was the film critic at the Times, actually, when I was in perimenopause in my late 40s. And I started getting these incredible heart palpitations in the middle of the night, and I'd wake up literally like you felt you were in a cartoon going, doo, doo, doo. I wake up with extreme anxiety at 4 in the morning and what I thought was a minor heart attack. Anyway, I went to the doctor and I said, I'm getting one of these every night. I wake up panicking, sweating, and my heart is just going, and they gave me an MRI and they checked my heart and they said, no, you're just drinking too much coffee. And I thought, that's weird. And then something else happened to me a few months later. And I'd always just been a healthy person that got through stuff. And I was not going to sit around complaining. You know, I just wasn't that kind of person. But the next thing that happened to me was I was writing a shopping list on a Saturday. And I thought, I must shave my legs. And I wrote down the word shaver. And I thought, there's another word for that thing, but I can't remember what it is. And 15 minutes later, I remembered the word razor. And that had never happened to me in my whole life. Like, I was a film critic, I was remembering 350 films a year. If I forgot the name of one director, that was something, but I had never forgotten a domestic noun in my own house. And I went into complete panic because my mum had died of Alzheimer's. And I was aware of the nouns disappearing very slowly from her vocabulary over 10 years. And the horror of that whole situation. And so I rang all my friends, and this was six or so years ago, before this sort of menopause movement had appeared. And I said, I'm going crazy. I've got Alzheimer's. I can't remember anything. I'm having heart palpitations. And they're going, oh yeah, we're all on HRT. We've gone and got it privately because we couldn't get it from our GPs. And at that point, it was very hard to get it from your GP, and I couldn't get it from my GP. So indeed, I too went privately. And I got HRT, and my memory came back like that. My heart palpitations disappeared within 2 days, and my hot flushes, which I was trying to ignore, went away too. And also I'm a runner, and my joints felt better. I wasn't getting any running injuries anymore. And I felt like a miracle had been kind of handed to me. And I'd been Googling stuff and looking up stuff, and I was an investigative journalist, and you know, I knew where to go for lots of sources, but yet I was unable to find out that those were really common symptoms of the menopause. And indeed, only recently have heart palpitations been discussed as a common symptom. And indeed, we did a survey in the Davina program where we found out that 41% of women were getting heart palpitations in perimenopause and menopause. Yet that is a sort of huge unknown. So I realized if I didn't know, what did everyone else know? And I looked to see what information was there. I met Dr. Louise Newson, who runs the biggest menopause clinic in Britain. And I thought, right, we're going to make a documentary about this, you know. And I was also so terrified for all those women who thought they were losing their memory as well, and what a huge difference it had made to me. And I don't just advocate HRT for menopause, but in my case, I was chaos without it. So I really feel very strongly that the new kind of HRT is really great. Anyway, I will begin my my part of showing the PowerPoint if I can. You never know how wrong this may go, but we'll try that. And can you see that now, guys? Yes, some nodding is occurring. Fantastic. So so then I thought, right, we're going to make a documentary. Sold it to Channel 4 with some difficulty. Everyone else turned it down because it was about old ladies and yuck. And then eventually we got it through, got the money from the documentary for Channel 4, got a Scottish production company, and then COVID came and they shut down the documentary and they took all the money back because they didn't have any money then. So I thought, oh God, what do? I thought, I'll write a book. And that was actually a great thing, you know, while we were all making sourdough bread, I was making sourdough bread and writing this menopause book. And it was really good for me because I was forced as a journalist to ring people I probably would never have got interviews with, which were kind of people at Harvard who were menopause experts in their back bedroom, you know, stuck with nothing to do in COVID, and they all took my calls. So I was talking to the International Menopause Society, I was talking to Yale, I was talking to California, I was talking to France, I talked to every expert in Britain. And then I began reading the science papers, and Dr. Louise Newson helped me. And so I got this incredible menopause education that I wouldn't have normally got as a journalist. You know, we're so used to being on the surface, and I was doing deep science. And that has made a real difference to what I know and what I campaign about, because I've really, really talked to women. And I've talked to women who feel they've been gaslighted for years about their symptoms. And I've really looked into what happens to women at work and how they disappear from their jobs. Anyway, I will keep going because we haven't got that much time. But, you know, after the film, and at the same time, because this was going on throughout society, and I think just that Davina film and her talking publicly about her own perimenopause and being rather brave about talking, and I'm going to say it, you know, vaginal dryness in public, she was fantastic. And that meant that there was this movement in Parliament. These are three of my favourite people in the menopause movement: Dr. Louise Newson, who set up the Menopause Charity; in the middle, Caroline Harris MP, who has fought for all the HRT bills that have gone through Parliament. That's us all in Parliament Square. And the other person is Karen Arthur, who set up Menopause Whilst Black, which is a great Instagram worth following. And she's also got podcasts as well. And she is a great campaigner about menopause not being about misery, but about metamorphosis and the other changes, not just the medical ones, but the sort of psychological ones. And she is very, very cool also, so worth following. And this is Dan Danterbrink, who worked on this campaign for years and years before we all did. And that's her beneath Millicent Fawcett's statue. So she's a sort of suffragette of menopause. And, you know, I know some of you have had lectures here before about menopause, but it's always worth a roll through the worst symptoms, I think. And I was at the NHS the other day in a hospital, and we went around the room and in a menopause cafe, and we spoke about our worst symptom or our weirdest symptom. And, you know, I was talking about my weird heart palpitations. There were women talking about feeling like they had ants crawling up their legs, because the estrogen, when your estrogen disappears in menopause, you sometimes feel like the nerve endings are really tingling in your legs and your body, and you get this incredible itching. Who knew that had anything to do with menopause? And I mean, I'll give you the basic stuff, which is, you know, menopause, the average age of a woman going into menopause and her period stopping is 51, but anything can happen before then. And in your 40s, you've got perimenopause, and I consider it to be menopause's evil little sister, because you don't know it's there because you're still getting your periods, but you know, any of these symptoms can pop up. And that's the kind of hair loss. I had that. You know, you're getting maybe the occasional night sweat and you don't know about it. You're getting maybe stiff joints. You don't know why. Or like Davina, you get a dry vagina at age 44 and you talk about it. And, you know, you can do something about it with vaginal estrogen and HRT. And there's also a big thing, loss of libido in a lot of women. And for some women in late perimenopause, increased libido. So there is no chaos that might not be possibly related to menopause. And of course, it can be related to many other things, but it is really worth, and I always say to women in perimenopause or who are wondering, get an app or a list off the internet, which is just a bunch of menopause symptoms, go through them and look at them and have you got them a little bit severely, not at all. And really, if you can get a list of 20 or 30 and they're on the Balance app or downloadable, you can really look and say, well, what is that picture adding up to? You know, if I'd added up my heart palpitations, my loss of memories, my strange sweats, my running injuries, which I was putting down to all different things, it actually added up to the fact my estrogen and my progesterone had basically gone away. My two of the biggest female hormones had just disappeared. And I was suffering the consequences of hormonal loss, as all women do in menopause. And we can do something about that. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But one of the things we discovered that these symptoms, which everybody's putting down to all sorts of other things quite often, and indeed, you know, they can have depression or something else, but these symptoms, women identified themselves were stopping them working. And I think this is really, really key. And we did this poll of 4,000 women around Britain for the Channel 4 documentary, diverse women everywhere, with disabilities, everything. We did all that. And 1 in 10 said they had quit their jobs because of menopause. And that is a terrible thing because it just doesn't need to happen. There are solutions. There are things we can help with. And I think for employers, this is key. You know, those key workers, you know, those women in their 50s in the NHS, in transport, who basically saved the nation during COVID, are the very women who are walking out of their jobs in menopause. And I feel really strongly that we are here to support them, and that's what we're doing. And one of the other things we learned from this big poll we did, we asked women about their symptoms. And of course, doctors basically had just asked them, do you get a lot of hot flushes? Oh, yes, because they were kind of visible and measurable. But what we asked them about was what they felt. And 7 out of 10 of them said they struggled with brain fog or memory loss in menopause. Now, that is massive. That is people like me sitting going, razor, shaver, shopping list, oh my God, you know, and forgetting the name of their dog and putting their car keys in the fridge. But in important moments at work, like this moment, you're making a PowerPoint and you don't know what the next word is. And that moment seems like 10 minutes to you, but it's only a second to the people listening to you. But you can totally lose confidence at work because you just can't remember one small thing. And if you're in a job like a doctor or nurse and you've got to remember the name of a medicine that you've known for 20 years and that name goes, you are risking your job and someone's life. So people self-censor and they disappear from work and they go part-time and they go and do something else. And really, you don't have to have that memory loss if you go on body identical HRT. And again, this was our poll. It wasn't, the mental health aspects of menopause were huge. And I think this is where the big hidden place has come that our mothers didn't talk about, that we literally have barely got the vocabulary for now. And what it became clear to us in this poll was that it was all in our heads, basically, apart from the hot flushes. It was 84% was struggling with sleeplessness and exhaustion, 69% with depression and anxiety. Now, we did that just after COVID. Everyone had depression and anxiety at the end of COVID. So I think that figure is smaller, but it doesn't matter. Lots of women are struggling with depression and incredible anxiety in menopause. And yes, they do have hot flushes. Now here is what I use and what is the safest HRT. And if you look at the British Menopause Society guidelines or the Chelsea and Westminster NHS Menopause Clinic, which I think is one of the best in Britain, 95% of their prescriptions are this stuff. And this is what, if you are going to be dealing with HRT yourself, this is what you want to ask your doctor for. And naturally, there are various shortages of these things at the moment because lots of people are asking for it. But the blue pump is body identical estrogen, and it's a gel, and it's like hair gel. So you just squirt a little bit on your wrist or on your leg and just rub it in, and that's it, twice a day. And then that pill, again, is body identical progesterone, which was much safer than the old synthetic progestins, which were much riskier for breast cancer. This stuff is great, and it's not risky because it's a copy of your own molecule of your own hormone. So again, body identical. The little blue things, that's a see-through patch there, goes with any color of skin. They used to make patches that were beige, so you could only have beige skin. But now you can get a see-through HRT patch. And the pink tube there, and I'll tell you a bit more about that, is testosterone for women. And testosterone is the biggest female hormone, the one we make most of. Who knew? But these are things I learned when I was talking to the scientists. Again, the big breast cancer scares around HRT. It turns out they were on the older HRT. I won't go into too much detail, but this is a study of almost 500,000 women in the UK data bank. And those who were on the body identical HRT, i.e. the transdermal stuff that goes through your skin that's rubbed in, or a patch, and the progesterone, did not have an increased risk of breast cancer. And that's really good news. So we don't have to sit there going, oh my God, can't risk taking that stuff, because that's what I thought. And actually, if you get the right stuff, it is very different from what happened 20 years ago. And that's really changed. 500,000 more women are on HRT than were 2 years ago in Britain. Now, this is another thing which, you're looking at your menopausal women at work, you're thinking, oh, well, she's 26, she can't be menopausal. Yes, she can. And 1 in 40, yeah, I think it's, I'm trying to think, it's like 1 in 100 women under 40 get early menopause. So, it is really worth, and it's very difficult for some of those younger women to talk to their peers about it. And so this is a great place to go, the DAISY network, which has a whole lot of stuff on premature ovarian insufficiency and menopause when you're very young, and big support groups and Zoom groups and meetings. And that can really, really help with that sort of isolation for your younger colleagues or friends. And again, this is just what you're probably already doing this at work because you're already taking an interest in menopause, but educating is so important. Talking to men, talking in public about it, inviting a doctor in to talk to your workplace about what menopause services available, what people need. Again, and this probably does affect transport, and it certainly affects the NHS. Those awful nylon uniforms people were wearing with a V-neck that you had to pull over your head, and they were made of kind of look like cardboard and nylon, really. And these uniforms have been given to people, and if you had something you could unzip or take off, or 2 layers, it really, really helps when women are getting hot flushes in perimenopause, because you can't just sort of come in and throw HRT at it and everything works. In perimenopause, sometimes people get hot flush, nothing for 2 months, and then another one, and they don't know quite what's going on, but they want to be adaptable, they want to feel comfortable. And there are people who can't take HRT who really need to get a little bit of help, and it's a very simple thing to do. And again, one of the things we discovered in our poll, which is really significant for women who are can't leave their workstation, is that 44% of women in perimenopause in their 40s get enormously heavy periods, tsunami periods, and they are absolutely horrendous, I can tell you. And they do get better, but you don't know when they're going to come. They're very unpredictable, and it is really difficult if you're a nurse with a drip in someone's arm and this heavy period comes on, you weren't expecting it, and you've got to run off, and you get marked down by your manager for doing that. And really, we need to be thinking, why is that person leaving, and why did they need 10 minutes in the toilet? And give them that time. Be kind. It's not like you don't need a menopause policy. You just need to be sympathetic and be kind, I think. Again, help with the environment, but again, some environments are unchangeable, and it's those women in the toughest jobs, possibly driving buses, possibly, being nurses or doctors or whatever they're doing. They can't sit with a little fan on their desk and have a cup of water and then go for a little wander, because they are on the front line doing stuff. So often they are the people who need help to get to a doctor, to get treatment. And there are other treatments other than HRT for hot flushes, but just really, really need support in menopause to keep them in their jobs. Again, can people work from home? Yes, we can, as it turns out, as we're all doing right now. And, can we have more breaks? Now, this is my sciencey bit, and this is what I was sort of digging deep into when I was writing the book. And I met this expert in Weill Cornell University in New York, who is called Dr. Lisa Mosconi, and she was also in our film. And she's written a book called The XX Brain. And what I didn't realize till I started researching this is your brain entirely rewires in menopause. You're not going crazy. It's as though when you're an adolescent, your brain rewires. We know that. In pregnancy, afterwards and before, your brain changes and rewires to be this kind of multitasking brain that can, listen for a child crying. You just alter the way you operate entirely. And again, we change a third time. We change in menopause. And this picture here on the left is perimenopause, a brain before menopause. So she's 43, and then that's the same woman at 53. Now, there's nothing wrong with her brain. She can still remember things, but it has entirely changed the way it works. And you can see it's red and firing on all cylinders on one side there. And then it's gone blue, and it's basically changed fuel. And I'm just going to show you a very scientific graph, but it's quite good. Hold with me on this. But this is what happens to your brain pre-menopause and post-menopause. And if you look at the lines, they're looking at what your grey matter is doing, what your white matter is doing, what the blood in your brain is doing, what the glucose, which is basically the sort of petrol in your brain, is doing. And you can see in the middle, it's complete chaos. That's all you maybe need to gain from this thing, is that things are going up and things are going down, and you don't know what's happening. And no wonder you're getting these sort of memory lapses, and your temperature isn't being controlled. And what happens is that grey matter goes down, which is your kind of basic thinking processing material. It goes down and then it goes up again. And then your white matter, which is your kind of making connections part of your brain, goes down and would appear to stay down. Nobody's bothered to see what happens next because they haven't bothered to study women's brain scans after that. And again, for women who are not on HRT, their glucose mechanism, which is their fuel, goes down, and they start using blood as the fuel much more in their brain. So basically, you're changing from petrol to diesel. And you know what that does if you get the wrong fuel in the car. You think about that in the middle of your menopause. And you really are making these huge changes that you could be very proud of at the end, once you've got through this transition. But it genuinely is a transition where different stuff happens in your brain. And there's not enough study on this. And your average doctor has no idea this is what's happening in your brain. But we do, and women do. Women recognize that they've got this anxiety, that they're in this muddle, that they're not the person they were, and everything around them is the same. And that is the point at which we have to help and tackle and change things and make this transition a brilliant one rather than a kind of panic stations one. And the other thing there, and I'll be very quick on this, is the amyloid plaque deposition, which is the red line, which is the precursor to Alzheimer's. And it has been shown that women who take HRT, particularly the transdermal kind, have far fewer amyloid plaques in their brain and are 70% less likely to get Alzheimer's. And we're waiting for more research on that. But if you're like me, daughter of Alzheimer's, it does make sense to find out about HRT early and wait for feminism to catch up as well, and science and feminism to catch up. Again, quick one, because it's important to talk about sex at work. As you know, you've got to talk about the whole person. And, most, the majority of women are saying here, I've lost interest in sex during menopause. What can we do about that? There's two things that are going wrong. One is often testosterone. We've got low libido. It's gone way down. I had no testosterone by the time I was 50. But in fact, it's women's biggest hormone. It's the one we make most of. We just make 1/10 of what men make. But it makes a big difference, not just to our sex lives, but to our energy, sort of commitment to things, just kind of get up and go. And discussing it with women who are on testosterone, lots of them say to me, I feel real mental sharpness. And it has really, really helped a lot of women who are doing quite high-end jobs to add testosterone to the package of HRT. They get the estrogen, the progesterone, and they add testosterone. You can get it on the NHS. You've got to go and probably ask a specialist, but it's in the NICE guidelines, and you can get it for libido, but not for anything else. Even though you'd like it for mental sharpness, you can only ask if your sex life, got to go in and say, oh, sex life's not going well, can I have some testosterone? Which is so old fashioned because it does so much more, but that's what we've got to deal with right now. The other thing you can get, vaginal estrogen, which is either a cream or a tiny little pill you pop in your vagina. And if you think in our 50s, how much do we spend on Chanel for our wrinkles and this and that and retinols? What's happening down there? Exactly the same. What prevents it happening is putting a tiny bit of estrogen back directly on the vulva and vaginal area. You can ride a bike, you can ride anything else. You can, you don't get urinary tract infections so often, really important at work. It makes a huge difference to keeping the tissues of that area supple and really, really healthy. Cheap as chips on the NHS, vaginal estrogen, really, really worth getting and keeping for the rest of your life. And it really, really helps with UTIs. Nobody tells you that either. So I also, quickly before we finish, just want to talk about alternatives, because 1 in 7 women get breast cancer. And I've been working with quite a few of my friends who've had breast cancer about what they do if they don't want to take HRT. And some do, but quite a lot of them don't. And the thing is that there is no big, great alternative to getting your own hormones back. That's just true. But there are things that can make a huge difference. And one of the most massive one, I think, is actually exercise. And the studies I was reading show that if women have had breast cancer and they take 20 minutes exercise every day, they halve their chances of getting a recurrence of breast cancer. It really, really improves your chances of everything working better. So that's really important. Again, that anxiety I was talking about, sometimes meditation helps. That really helps to calm the brain and take control of the brain, as does cognitive behavioral therapy. And in Wales, there was a study of a bunch of women who had been and had breast cancer, were in menopause, and they got them to do sort of cognitive behavioral sort of exercises every time they had a hot flush, and they were doing them together in the room or whatever. And they reduced their hot flushes by 40% by just basically taking control and calming down. And it doesn't work completely, but it really, really, really helps. So, you've got to work really hard on alternatives. It's not, it's not easy, but if you're willing to put in the time, then that really helps. Again, nutrition, sugar in your microbiome. We all know about the new microbiome and which is sort of being discovered in the last kind of 10 years, that your stomach is just filled with all sorts of microorganisms that need fed with the right foods, and they have a huge effect on mood, and they can have an effect on hot flushes too. So really worth following Tim Spector, actually. He's very good on the microbiome. And then I did a thing about what vitamins actually work that are worth paying for, because you can go to Holland and Barrett and buy a whole shelf of stuff, and frankly it all costs 30 quid, and it's just a bunch of vitamins repackaged as something else. Not always, but there's nothing, there's nothing stunning there that's going to change your menopause forever. Vitamin D is brilliant for bones, really worth having. Get it. Brilliant for immunity. Omega-3, great for joints, muscles, all those things. Really good for your brain, worth having. Mediterranean diet lowers Alzheimer's. So these are simple things, and you kind of know them already, and most people do, but you've got to put them into action when your hormones disappear, because you've got to look after yourself better, and you've got to have more self-care. It really, really matters. Again, amusing time with CBD oil. I got my 2 friends who'd had breast cancer, and I got them to try high quality CBD oil. One's hot flushes disappeared, and the other one slept better. Now, that was not a scientific test, but there is really interesting stuff coming out of California about the effect it has on anxiety and sleep and calming down the whole system. So high quality, not the rubbish you get just down a market, but you've got to make sure you've got sort of a decent amount of of the substance in it, and it works, and it will not make you high. And again, your doctor can also offer antidepressants and blood pressure medicines that also happen to help with hot flushes, and that's clonidine, venlafaxine, and gabapentin. And again, you go to your doctor and ask about that. Not great, but not bad. Now, I am going to zip through that because we don't have much time, but quickly, in terms of inclusion, and this is really interesting, this is Dr. Nigat Arif, who is a great friend of mine and helps with the Menopause Charity, and she's on breakfast telly as a doctor, and she's also got a fantastic Instagram, Dr. Nigat Arif, and she does her Instagrams in Urdu and Punjabi. So you'll hear her going blah 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 blah, vaginal estrogen, blah 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 blah. And I have no idea what she's saying, but what happens is on TikTok and things like that, young people take these videos and they show them to their mums. And it is a fantastic way to get into that community and have that conversation that you're not necessarily having here. So there's that. Again, queermenopause.com, good resource for the trans experience, which is so complicated for trans men and non-binary people. And there is a community out there which is worth asking. There's very little medical information. It's again, Karen Arthur. What I advise everybody to have a go at, the Balanced Menopause app. 1 million women have downloaded it. It gives you treatment options, HRT, alternatives, and you can enter your periods, your cycles, and find out about all the different options. And the science is really, really good on that, better than in the NHS website. And then I think just at the end, I'll finish quickly. We're talking about the rise of menopause power. We're going to be positive about this and fearless and go out there and find solutions so that we live in good health for the next 20, 30, 40 years. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Fantastic, Kate. Thank you so much. A lot of information. No, great. And I think this is the thing, it's a lot to download, and I'm really glad that we are recording this session, because some of the things and comments we were getting back from people was, can I find out what Kate just said about those medications, because I've not noted it down. So maybe we can speak afterwards, and if you obviously, I appreciate you don't want to share your slides, but if you could let us know what those medications were that you mentioned, and I could share that with the group, because I think it's really worthwhile kind of having that as a being positive. I think the beginning of your book really struck me when I read it, and I'll just read it out to everybody here. But as once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through it, how you managed to survive. But the one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. And that's what this storm is all about. And I think that, trying to remain positive and trying to, see this as a proactive step in how you manage your own health, and how you support each other. And this is hopefully on the step of that. So I've got some lovely questions to come back to you on from the group. So there was similar vein and similar questions around the fact of struggling to find a GP. Who understands the situation. Even somebody said that they've got a female GP, and appreciating the NHS is overwhelmed, but it's quite depressing when they're not getting either the right information, or they feel that the information that they're getting is conflicting to what they're reading in other things. And if they don't get the advice they want, or they don't feel that they're being listened to, or they don't feel it's the right thing for them, number one, what do they do about it? And then just to pick up on a point that was mentioned around CBD and working in transport, there was a message that was put on the chat to say that unfortunately, due to the transport industry, that, it is something that we feel it can come up on drugs and alcohol tests that we have to do.
I didn't know that. I learn something every time.
Exactly. But luckily we do have a HR expert on this, and she came back on it saying that if they are deemed to be THC free, which I have no idea what that means, and maybe I need to become a bit more of a drug expert to understand it will not show on drug and alcohol tests. So again,
but they are supposed to be free from kind of hallucinogenic sort of substances, but whether or not they are and how safe they are, yes, I think that's probably not necessarily ideal for your audience.
Yeah, it's just something I just wanted to mention to the group and I do think it's something to think about. But that main point about, if you do get advice from a GP and it's not what you feel you want to do, what can you do about it?
Well, it's the National Health Service, still worth remembering, and you can go in there and say, I'd like a second opinion, as soon as you can get me in. It's also worth going to your practice and speaking to the receptionist and saying, who's your best menopause person? And often they will have the great person, who could be a man or a woman. And it is worth doing that. You can ask for a referral to menopause clinic. It's months usually. So that is a bit of a nightmare, but you do have the right to a referral. But what you should be able to do is go in, and patient choice is a huge thing for the NHS. It's one of their policies. It's one of their things. And the other thing you have is the NICE guidelines, which are the doctor's guidelines, NICE guidelines. And if you put in NICE guidelines menopause, you will get the whole thing on the menopause. And it says women should be offered HRT, you know, the benefits outweigh the risks. And I think one of the great things to go in is download one of those symptom lists, take it in with the box of ticked or on your phone and say, look, here are my 5 symptoms. They seem to me to be menopausal. What do you think? What if I try HRT and it doesn't work for a few months? I'll drop it and I'll come back to you. But let me try it. And that's my choice as a patient. And, you know, also I want the best HRT. I do not want the old stuff. I don't want the old fashioned stuff. I would like body identical. So one of those elements has to be transdermal. So it has to be a patch, a gel or a spray. And those are way safer for blood clots and way safer for everything. And then you either get progesterone in that pill, the butrogestan, or a Mirena coil also works as the progesterone element of HRT. You can do that too. And lots of people do that. But yeah, I think be prepared and go in and say, these are the things, and then take someone with you. Because I always find when I'm in the doctors, I mean, it took me 3 shots to get testosterone on the NHS, and I'd written a book about it. I was like, oh, I'm sorry for coming in. And I just thought, what am I doing? And so you really need to maybe take your friend who'll go, just say what you said to me earlier. And well, I think a doctor, when you know you're confident, they'll go, okay. They're not trying to stop you necessarily getting something, I don't think. It just might be the boundaries of their knowledge are being pushed and they feel a bit insecure about that, or they have very strong opinions. But you have a right. You have a right to get this. And in terms of people, you know, who are facing Alzheimer's or osteoporosis in the family, you know, 1 in 2 women get osteoporosis. HRT lowers your chances of getting osteoporosis. HRT, keeping your hormones up, builds your bone by 3% every 2 years. It really is worth it if you're looking at that in the future of your family or your grannies have had osteoporosis. So, you know, it's not just about feeling nice about your symptoms, it's about our long-term health and our long-term costs to the British state. We don't want to be running around without, you know, with Zimmer frames. We want to be walking and enjoying, you know, being over 50 and not, you know, not breaking our femurs and things like that. So, yeah.
Great, thank you for that. The next question was something that we actually picked up on one of our earlier sessions. We had, I don't know if you know her, but you probably do, Julie Robinson spoke at an earlier session, and she actually talked about her personal story of, she went through the medical menopause, so she had a hysterectomy, and that's something that obviously hasn't been picked up today, but was picked up at one of our earlier sessions. And I've reached out to that person and said, look, you know, it'd be great to talk about that. And I actually have not a personal experience, but my best friend went in, had breast cancer, had both her breasts removed, and ended up having to have a hysterectomy, and went through that at 39. And you know, it is, as I say, you know, an incredibly scary process to go through at any age. But I guess the quickness and the difference in terms of when it is a medical menopause that comes on is something that, you know, maybe a suggestion to think about for your slides for the future. But I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to add to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who just had a hysterectomy, an oophorectomy, so the ovaries out at the same time. And actually, we got prepared with her doctor beforehand, and she had the gel and actually testosterone because she was much younger, and she had the 3 hormones ready, and she started taking them the day after the operation while she was, you know, recovering. And I think you need, especially if you're younger and you really, really must get your hormones back for your long-term health, you need to make an HRT plan pre-hysterectomy, pre-oophorectomy. And because it comes on like gangbusters, it's horrible. You're recovering from surgery and someone's taken all your hormones away. I mean, you don't know what's happening to you. And the idea that we do not look after women and prepare them properly is shocking, I think. And it's so important that, you know, we talk about that as much to one another and tell our sisterhood that we really need to know about that beforehand.
Definitely. And I was shocked that that wasn't something that was even discussed at, from the NHS. It just wasn't thought about. And I think, you know, when we think about all the plans that we make when we're having babies, why don't we think about this other part of it that is just as important? So no, I will reach out to that person. But yes, I do think it is a scary thing. So yeah. The other thing we talked about here was somebody was saying that they tried HRT patches and they see a real improvement, but what they haven't been able to do is you know, they felt that there's having the anxiety is still there, weight gain is still there. What can we do now? Just to put it in around to say that we are looking at a future session to have a mindfulness expert who's coming in to talk to us about how do we support ourselves, and some of those last points that you had on your slide, which I think were really helpful. But is there anything personally you feel, obviously you were a runner, I know that's something that in terms of our own personal experience might be something you can talk about, but is there anything else there you think that in terms of that, if it's not still working once you're doing everything you can, is there anything else?
Yeah, well, it depends. I don't know quite what's in her patch, because if it's a patch which has got a progestin in it, it's got the two things together in the patch. Sometimes taking the body identical progesterone is more helpful in terms of anxiety, and you take it at night and it sort of knocks you out and helps you sleep, and it's very calming. But I don't know what she's on. Aside from that, yeah, I think you know, what else can you do except for meditate, exercise, do breathing exercises? It is very difficult, and maybe your anxiety is a mental health thing that you need to go and discuss with a mental health professional. And we know you can't ever get an appointment, but you know, it's maybe worth looking into something online or something, even if you can't manage to get that, because sometimes, you know, I know we blame it all on the menopause, but in fact that particular item is, you know, something else, and it's really worth looking at yourself as a whole and seeing which bits are which, and often you can't see that yourself.
I think it's really helpful, and I think that's the thing that I was shocked about doing my own research, is the amount of women that are misdiagnosed for mental health issues, you know, because of the menopause. And I do think that's something that the person we've got in a future event to speak is a mindfulness expert who works specifically with cancer patients. So she is dealing frontline with those, you know, it's how I got in contact with her, because she supported my friend through that medical menopause, which was just amazing. And I do think it's something, you know, mind over matter. It's scary how much it affects you, isn't it, in every single part of your life. So that's fantastic. We had a question here about, you know, somebody giving their own experience here about heavy and irregular periods, and just saying that, you know, I guess we're transport, we're working in a predominantly male environment, you know, sometimes frontline, sometimes in environments that are not set up for women. You know, we're still struggling with that as a workforce ourselves. I've just reached out and we're doing some work, Kate, with the Equalities Office, and Tracy Boscott, who I believe you may know anyway, in terms of the Menopause Champion and now the new Menopause Support MP. I feel that there's more that we need to do for transport. I feel that this is something that is almost like you know, a bottom sort of, you know, the person that's menopause champion for, you know, working on the front line in different industries. I do think this is something that we need to make more of a voice about. And I think your last chapter in the book about feminism and the future, I just love to get your thoughts on that, and just if there's anything you think we should be doing as a movement, as women in transport, to kind of get on the back of that wagon, but also to really make our own steps towards that.
I think you could probably do something very powerful in terms of the media, couldn't you? Talking about it in public and talking about what it is like to be driving a bus or a train, or be stuck in one space where you can't sort of say, oh, I'll just pop off for half an hour. And that you need special medical advice, or people need their jobs changed for a while they're going through that stage. But I mean, when you're talking about those periods, the thing, and I've only quite sort of understood now the things that are happening, is that when you're in your 40s and your estrogen and progesterone are going down, your estrogen's actually doing like this, doing your full Coney Island roller coaster. It's nuts. So you've got these terrible lows and these terrible highs, which is why we all have quite a disturbed time. And your progesterone's going down like that. And your progesterone protects the womb. And you get a big buildup of blood in the lining of the womb if you don't have any progesterone. And so you get these giant periods because your estrogen's way up high and your progesterone's low. and it's going like this. So it's a very crazy period and uncontrollable. And but some women find that getting a Mirena coil or getting progesterone and keeping it steady for part of the month really, really helps with those giant periods. Most doctors don't know enough about that. And I mean, that's exactly what this sort of thing, it'd be great to get a doctor in, you know, who could really speak about that, because it's kind of technical, but it affects every moment of your life. And you know, the idea that hasn't been something we've worked out, it's just very annoying, isn't it? I'm doing a film about the pill now, and the amount of stuff we don't know about the pill is absolutely gobsmacking. And it's just another one of those things that women's health, you know, it just doesn't matter at a certain point, you know.
It's terrifying, isn't it? And I think it's one of those things that we end up feeling that it's something that only after a period of time we're passing on that knowledge to the next generation coming up to us. And I've, you know, very much tried to talk to my daughters about it. And the fact is, we started the session saying it wasn't something that was discussed with our mothers, and still isn't. So as I say, thank you so much for your time today. And it's just been the hour has flown by. And I've got a lot of information, and I do think the only thing I would say to you, and I was going to say it privately, but I'll say it publicly, thank you so much for everything you've done, and I appreciate you giving the time. We struggle to find a doctor to be at these sessions, and if you do know anybody that would be willing, it would be fantastic to get a referral from you, so we can maybe pick that up offline anyway. And we'll keep you up to date with some of the work that we're going to try and do to push the agenda, the transport minister, and you know, catch the bus and you know, talk about vaginal dryness next to the person, you know. We're, you know, again, talking about this more openly and being able to talk about it as a group is really important. So thank you. And the comments coming through, everybody really thanking you for your time. And as I say, I'll follow up with you, Kate, separately, but appreciate everything you've done for us today, and thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for having me on, and enjoy your chat and keep it going.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Kate. Thank you. So, such a fangirl. I'm like, oh, she's so amazing. Sorry, apologies, everybody. Just I'll calm down now. And I'm not just to say that one of the things, and I appreciate we've got 5 minutes left. If I wasn't able to pick up on your question, or if you do have a question for Kate, please do email me, and I'm more than happy to put those to her. She's been fantastic in sharing resources and information, and I really would recommend, as I say, getting her book, and also, if you can, just listen to the audio, because I put it on in the car, and it's just great, because when do I find the time to read a book? Never. So, you know, just listening to it when you're driving or when you're doing something is really helpful. Caroline Wilson and I are members and lead on the Yorkshire Hub. And one of the things that we're looking to set up is Coffee and Connect. We started these sessions on the back of people saying they wanted to know more. They felt they wanted to talk to other people. Menopause Mondays has gone from strength to strength, which is fantastic to see. But sometimes you just want to chat to someone and have a one-to-one. And this isn't just about the menopause, but this is about us connecting as women in transport, whether or not that's putting yourself forward as a mentor, putting yourself forward as somebody that would just like to speak to somebody else on the same level, for you to speak to somebody who has been in the industry for 15 years and you want to talk about what to do next. Caroline and I do connect with coffee, and I love the moments that we share. And Caroline, can you tell a bit more information about that and what we're going to do to move it forward?
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. Hi, everyone. It's great to see everyone here today. An incredible session by Kate. As I mentioned in the chat, I think I'm guilty of being in a bit of denial about the menopause. So at the age of 48 next month, lots of aches and pains and all sorts of things going on. I think I'm starting to join the dots. There's a bit of a pattern. It's actually my first session listening to anyone talk about menopause other than Davina, which I'm connected to her on social media. So thanks to Davina, I did finally cave in and buy my first kind of menopause related product, if you like. So I've just invested in some marine collagen for my achy joints, because my knees, my back, my ankles, everything seems to be hurting at the moment. So thanks for setting up today, Charlotte. It was incredibly insightful. on a personal level. So thank you. So we're quite new at Women in Transport Yorkshire. So it was kind of like, well, actually, let's start to stir up the conversations. Let's get people connected. And that was the kind of inspiration behind this concept of Coffee and Connect. So essentially, we'll be launching this at our event on the 23rd of May, which Charlotte might just touch on in a moment, which is in a face-to-face session in Leeds on the afternoon at 3 o'clock. So we'll be launching the event then. So it'll be a virtual opportunity to connect with someone new within Transport Yorkshire. So Charlotte and I will be doing the kind of pairings up. So you don't need to worry about the logistics. All you need to do is say, I'm up for this. I would like to kind of be involved in Coffee and Connect, and I would like to chat to someone new that's in the network, and then we'll pair you up as best we can, trying to think about like-mindedness and how you might be able to help each other. So further details will be launched on the 23rd of May, but that's the kind of idea behind the concept. And you'll kind of be paired up, and you're left to your own devices in terms of the conversation, what you want to discuss, how you want that to flow. And you can obviously then meet face to face if you want to, or you can just have one session. It's completely up to you and the person you're paired up with and what works for you. But I think it will be, you know, given that we've started the conversation around menopause and support, it'd be really good to kind of perhaps focus on that for your first session. But just a really simple way of getting the conversations going and getting us all connecting and talking to each other, and talking to somebody that might be outside of your network already. So if you're in the rail industry, you might be paired up with someone in bus. If you're in your 50s, you might be paired up with someone in the 20s. So we'll try and really mix things up. So that's the idea.
Thank you, Caroline. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I'm very excited about it. And I do think, as Caroline said, we've got an event on the 23rd of May in Leeds, and thank you to Mark McDonald, who have offered their office space there. We've got a speaker, Annie, who is a 70-year-old model. She's a billboard star, and she's started off her career in cuisine and cooking. She's an amazing advocate for women's rights. So very excited about hearing her speak on the event. We're all going to go for a sparkling water or a gin, whatever your tipple is, afterwards, and also just a good opportunity to meet face to face. We've also got another event coming up in June, which is a virtual one, which is we're about to start to promote that, which is one of a contact of mine who's a women's advocate. She does a charity called Believe, which supports young Black women, supporting them with mentors. So very much along the lines of what we're trying to do today in terms of just widening our scope of the people that we're engaged with and who we're hearing from, and just having a different insight into the world of women's rights and equalities and where we sit today. So thank you, everybody. I'm 1 minute over, so I could talk forever on this subject, but I will let you all go, and thank you so much for everybody's contribution. Steve's put in there a link to some of the upcoming events in the chat. If you're not a Women in Transport member, but you've come along today to experience the sessions, these are monthly. And we hope that you will consider joining. And thank you so much to everyone today, and I really appreciate your time. And thanks, Steve, for all your support and for being a man and being here today and listening to this. It's so important to bring our male colleagues in. So yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.